they took the Souls formula and added a ton to it. And I think maybe we should just move into talking about the full game at this point, because I think I could speak
The
for you.
retail,
Yeah, the
yeah, the
retail
retail
release.
version.
I'm gonna speak for you a little bit. The game's really good. I think we can agree. The game is pretty damn good, right?
A lot of the risks they had for putting the builds out to this retail release really did pay off.
Yes.
Like, I wish studios understood the value of demos a bit more and having the players have a chance to have a taste of it, because you get situations like this. Because if you market it well and do it well enough, you have yourself an underground hit. Like, up to the launch of Nioh, like, as great as it would have been for Tecmo Koei to provide us with a review copy, I actually had to go out and get a copy of the game myself. And because it was so under the radar, I could barely find a box copy.
Yeah.
Just a little story I got to bring
Well,
up.
I mean,
Like,
even
nobody was
like
expecting this game to take off. Nobody was expecting.
yes, exactly. I pre-ordered the game at Best Buy like online because of the Gamers Club Unlocked, but I couldn't store pickup. Like I had to have it shipped. I couldn't go get it because they didn't give my store copies. Like that's how this game works. And they're even now having shortages. Like people can't find it. Anecdotal, but still, I'm sure it's definitely doing
That's really
way more
sad
than they
because,
thought. Yeah.
yeah, like that happened to me in a certain level as well. Like, I actually have like a couple of stores I go to. Like, I do everything I can not to go to GameStop. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
GameStop for warts and all, but I have this very nice sort of smaller chain store I go to as well to pick up my stuff. And they're usually very good. They're very competitive with GameStop, and I like to reward that. But they didn't get any copies of Neo at all. Nobody, like, the retailers, like, they were expecting a low turnout, then suddenly
Mm-hmm.
boom. And then I had to go to GameStop, and they only had like maybe 3 copies at best. And I'm like, whoa, something happened here.
Yeah, something. It's so nice to see though, especially when there's always the hey, look at this screenshot of 30 copies of some dumb game they sent to the store. Like every store has 50 copies of this. Haha, look what they did. But it's nice to see the reverse of that.
There are copies shipped, and then there's copies sold, and then there is the demand for more copies once those
Yeah,
copies get sold. Like,
at
we
least
don't
we have digital stuff now. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, but at the same time, I like when it comes to certain games like this, I like having it on disc so I can loan it out to friends.
Oh, me too. I'm a big physical disc
I
copy.
mean,
Yeah.
like for me, like, I have a sort of like price point and data size kind of thing. Like, if it's below a certain amount of gigabytes or below a certain price, I'll get it digitally. I don't care. But certain things I like to have on disc. Certain things I like to have on physical media. But back to the actual game itself, you
Yes.
mentioned how the tutorialization went really well, and that's what I really did love a lot when it came to the opening of Neo, where it starts you off in the Tower of London, and the game plays like a Soulsborne, a Souls-like, an
Mm-hmm.
action RPG. It's you get a weapon, you get armor, you attack. It's it's the most basic form of tutorialization, and I feel as if they did a good job with that because Team Ninja they didn't directly imitate From Software's Dark Souls. They didn't leave it all to messages you could easily skip or forget because people do that. They kept
Yeah.
it to text. They kept it to voiceover. They gave you the video gamey like prompts so you knew what you were doing. And then once you basically got through the first boss, I will admit that's where things got very clunky for me because then it goes to a text crawl about how your character read about the greatness of the mystical
Oh
East
yeah.
and just somehow managed to internalize all of this mystic mumbo jumbo about guardian
I
spirits and
became a
key
samurai because
pulsing, and
I
I'm like,
read a book, right?
apparently he's a very good reader. Like,
Yeah,
I will,
right.
and for me, I couldn't really call that to be a bad thing. Like, I I'm merciless when it comes to word economy and information density when it comes to video game narrative and video game dialogue and video game vocabulary because you have only so many words. You better be using them properly. And I just found it to be kind of funny that they just dedicated an entire like prologue paragraph to explaining how this foreigner how to use a Kusarigama. I'm like, whatever. But the way they did it, though, also sold the tone of it, which I mentioned before we started the stream. The tone of Nioh was really weird. Like, on the one hand, I feel like this might be Team Ninja's best storytelling to date, and even then, it's unremarkable. It's very remarkably cheesy and camp. Like, you brought this up. I brought this up before. This game borrows heavily from Japanese culture, and I'm not just talking about the monster designs. This is based in historical truths. This is actually set in the Sengoku era, the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States, the time of warring warlords and nobles and the like, and horrible conflict. And your character is actually based off of William Adams, who is historically the world's first Western samurai who traveled and became an assistant to Tokugawa Ieyasu. And I'm like, that's neat. You have all this historical stuff, and then you get to like the stuff that happens with the plots in the beginning, where it's about this evil guy that's working for Queen Elizabeth that's trying to steal the energy of Japan to create eternal life so they can destroy the heathens of Japan. I'm like, this is a comic book villain.
Like, this doesn't fit in with the rest, but okay.
This is so silly. And then you have and then of course you have the more overt stuff, like the 15-foot high Oni and the Japanese monsters you fight, like you mentioned the blob creature, the Umibozu, the giant sentient water monster. You have the Jirogumo, the spider woman demon, the giant's poisonous centipede monster with the detachable body parts, the Yuki Onna, the ice spirit woman. Like, it is so unabashedly Japanese. I kept getting enthralled with it. And it was also fun how they remixed certain ideas, and I liked how they kind of moved you into it while also kind of selling the tone of this. Like, one of the silliest things that still cracks me up was a cutscene they had right where you fight the main boss, the first boss. It was a cutscene where William like leaps off the tower into the water to go and get to his boat so the game could start. When I finished that, he was in full plate mail knight armor and wielding a giant two-handed sword. He jumps in and I'm like, and that's where he dies.
I know. They just completely skip it. Like, oh, now he's going on a journey. He somehow swam in 200 pounds of armor. Don't care. He just swam to his boat and he made it out alive. Okay, doesn't explain anything.
He swam to his boat and then sailed for 2 years, and nothing else bad happened to him. And he's amazing. Like, well, if he has that much strength to swim in full plate armor,
I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Like, it's that camp vibe to it, and I do mean that lovingly.
It has fun with itself. Like, it has like the first cutscene with the little cat spirit you get is like cutesy, and he does his little nya sounds, and you're like, it's having fun. It's definitely more lighthearted than the actual Warring States period would kind of normally allow.
And yet at the same time, the setting doesn't feel like set dressing. Like, there's a level where you actually go to Honnoji Temple, where Nobunaga Oda was betrayed. They actually focus on those parts, and I do think that gives its own special kind of vibe to it. It's like, okay, this is set in wartime. How much worse can this get? Oh wait, let's have supernatural, vengeful spirits and monsters show up as a response to all the death and destruction and despair we've cultivated through a war campaign, and crank this up to an 11. I'm like, there we go. That's a different take.
Yeah, no, it's very original, and it goes back to, like, as you kind of brought up, it's foreign, so it's interesting, but it is like even as someone who, like, I took some Japanese in college, and I've watched anime, like, it's not completely foreign, but it's still cool to see because we don't get games like this. We don't get games in Japan. How many, besides like Nobunaga's Ambition game, like, how many games are about that? Besides Dynasty Warriors, how many games? And this is the same, Koei.
Talking about Koei seems to be the only big studio that kind of focuses on this stuff. And it's also why I don't like when certain people kind of decry the Dynasty Warriors and the Samurai Warriors games that get published, because they just look at the gameplay and think, oh, it's so simple. I'm like, yeah, but do you know any other game out there that mashes together, romanticized ideas of the Chinese Romance of the Three Kingdoms with hair metal? I mean,
Yeah, it's
uh,
definitely unique what they
I'm
do.
glad they exist. I'm glad
Yes,
they work with that.
yes,
So I mentioned
but
before that I
mhm,
did review Neo for thegamefanatics.com,
mhm.
and I guess we could talk bit about that.
I
My
guess we
take.
should review the game a little.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and first things first, though, I really want to put my line in the sand by saying, I mean, we've done this multiple times already throughout the stream. Calling Neo similar to From Software Soulsborne games is not a criticism. It is
Mm-mm.
not. It is nowhere near a problem. The problem I find is that if you take ideas from a game or a genre or even a subgenre, let's face it, Souls-likes are based on their own subgenre now. There's so many imitators and remixes of it.
Yeah.
My problem is if you do something with it, bring something new to the table. Bring something different. Bring something that makes your game stand
Stand
out.
out and be
Don't.
unique and different from the other ones. And the thing with Neo is they brought like several layers. They didn't just change a little bit of the combat. I mean, just to do like an exhaustive list, they had 3 stances for each weapon. They had completely different weapon styles. They made it
Yep.
way faster. They changed how stamina works. They added in skill trees for every weapon and for ninjutsu and all that. They added titles and stuff, which are like little challenges you can do to unlock further minor boosts. Like they really added a lot of stuff onto the Souls formula. It's
They
not
they,
just a copy paste.
they went numbers heavy with it, and
Yes. Oh God.
uh, oh my gosh, it's number prawn. So
There's
much number
numbers
prawn.
everywhere.
All the numbers.
It's funny if
Like
you go to like your character screen and you like press R2 a bunch of times, it's just like here's 60 different stats if you want to look at them. Like okay.
and that's I will admit that that's actually a problem I actually did have with the game, believe it or
Mhm.
not. Like
Yeah.
this is actually this is close to a criticism I actually did have towards Neo. Like this is gonna sound so bizarre. Like the storytelling is more conventional. It has a much more conventional level structure. It's go kill monsters, get to the boss, kill it, cutscene. That's fine. That's a workaday formula. That is perfectly content. I have no problem with that. They have a world map like Mario Brothers 3 or whatever with little side missions and hard mode versions of other missions. I'm like, I'm fine with this. This is cool. I'm
Mhm.
down. You know, but then I get to the progression and get to the loot and the weapon systems, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there is just way too much perks, way too many
Yeah.
things to balance. Like it reminds me of why I never really could get into stuff like Diablo or like dungeon crawlers like that, where they just they just spew loot at you non-stop. Like,
It
okay,
is
what's it? Uh, oh yeah, like seriously, like what's this thing? Oh, it does 50 more damage in the sword. Yeah. Also, it has a plus 5% bonus to this enemy, a plus 6% bonus to this thing, minus 4% to
yeah,
stamina regen,
yeah,
but also has
right?
a but also has a C plus grade rating to familiarity rating based on a formula based off of 3 of your stats divided by the average of
Yeah, yeah.
stop.
It's not like, oh, I got the iron sword and I got the iron sword +1. It's like, oh, iron sword +1. This one does fire damage. That one doesn't. This one does stamina regen. This one does that. This one does this. Oh, this raises your equipment rate, which does this. And you're like, okay. At a certain point, like
Like
early in the game, I just stopped picking things up if they weren't better. If it didn't tell me they were better, I'm not even picking it up. I can't.
for me though, it got even worse though because at the stats for a while, I did kind of just phase it as white noise, same as you. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, just
Like,
I
no.
was like base defense, base attack. What stat does it scale with? This good, okay, and I stick to that. I mean, I did get to the point where later on I did start utilizing some of the perks I came across with certain specialized armor for the build I was going with, but that was after like 20 hours into the game where I was kind of easing myself into it because it's way too easy to have to see all of this and have the game feel like it's being needlessly complicated. And here's the thing, it's the difference between being this it's a strange parlance thing I always kind of have a problem with certain people. Like there's depth, which is the game is simple on the surface, but it's complex as all get outs. Like seriously, you know, people play chess nonstop,
Yeah.
and
Chess is a good
you know,
example of that.
actually not exactly the best example, but whenever I think of chess, people keep thinking you move pieces, but that's a complex game.
Yeah.
That's a complex game. A game that has depth is something like, whew, what in the world? What in the world can I even think about? Usually deck building games I think about when it comes to that, because it has usually basic rules, but then how they utilize those rules can have a shelf life all its own. Look at Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
And, but
Layers upon layers.
and then there's complicated, which I feel is a problem, where they find a way to make something in the most roundabout way imaginable seem like it's interesting. Where they have too many stats, like seriously, all this number crunching is just in favor of making sure you get hurt less and you hit harder.
Yeah.
That is mostly it for the most part. And the problem is when I start phasing out all this complexity, I there's a problem, because it isn't just this Diablo loot system. There's also a blacksmith where you can reforge your weapon to basically scale them up if you want. Like you like this weapon and you like its perks, but there's this other weapon that has better stats. Oh, just merge them together, and it'll
Yeah.
cost you a lot of gold because you also have to manage gold in the game. But you can also make your own weapons, which rolls dice, and then you can soul match one with the other, or you can do all this other stuff that has
But
this. And then
the
you mentioned the title system, where
yes.
where congratulations, you killed X amount of Oni. Congratulations, you can choose to get +1% bonus health. I'm like,
And
guys,
that gets starts into like grains of sand we're counting. But the like, to the game's credit, you can tune a lot of that out. Like, you really don't need to be paying too much attention. If you're good enough, or even if you're just kind of will it, you can just
yeah,
make it to the game. You don't need to go to the blacksmith. Like, I've reforged one thing in all my time. Like, I'm not really into it. I don't like spending money in games or in life. So I'm like, nah, I'll just keep what I find. It's cool. And it's gotten
but
me pretty dang far, you know?
that's the issue I do have, though, because there's all
Yeah.
that's gone into this game, and a lot of these players, like you and me, are filtering this out, and I feel as if I can only tell it's not aimed directly at us, but I can't really call it bad design. It's just
Hmm.
that it feels like it doesn't gel well with me personally, because when I think of this sort of stat heavy crunch gameplay, I think of something more tactical, like a turn based RPG, or something more akin to an MMO or the like. But whenever I play it, it feels like I'm playing once again a Souls like, which rewards skill as well as upkeep of your stuff, and I feel as if it feels like it's pulling me back and forth between two different things.
Yeah, I can get that. Well, there's also the problem, to just get off of that and move on to another problem I have with it. And these are problems in the way of like, yeah, they're problems, but I'm still really liking it. The skill trees are just a mess. Like, they're
Yeah,
way too complicated with stuff that's not super interesting. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll spend points. I don't know. Like, it's really not a lot going on there.
yeah. Oh yeah, I brought this up as well in my review. I'm like, okay, the initial stuff you get is good, like
Yes.
the bare bones stuff, like the ability to key pulse by
Well,
dodging,
by dodging. Yeah, perfect. That's perfect skill.
being able to
End
key
it
pulse by
there.
dodging. The flux mechanic, where you gain even more stamina from your key pulse by switching your stance. So it
Yes.
encouraged you to mix it up. I'm like, that's fine. But then the later stuff, like there is some stuff there that is whoa, but it isn't as simple as actually, yeah, let's clarify quickly, for anybody else that isn't paying attention. But yeah, there are skill trees based off of the various weapons you can learn in the game of
Yeah, for
Nioh.
each weapon. Oh, and
Axes,
also, the game
hammers.
doesn't tell you there's passives in each skill trees. You don't have to use that weapon. You can just get the passives. Like, you could just go spend points elsewhere on the axe, even if you never use it, and get more life. Like, I was like, oh, I didn't even know
But
this. I'm gonna go spend these points now.
But yeah, seriously, every single weapon type, and they even have ninjutsu and onmyo magic as
Mm,
their own separate thing. And the more and more you become familiar with weapons, or the more and more you use a certain weapon type, you get points, which you can spend into these skill trees. And at first, they're good.
yeah.
Like my build, my weapons of choice were dual swords and the kusarigama. And because I stuck to those, one for this long reach with this chain, the other for these swords, the more and more points I put into that, the more and more I was able to better myself. I was able to, once again, dash in order to gain health, or gain access to alternative attack types, like being able to end a combo with kicking,
Yeah.
to knock a guy off his feet, or or jumping back and throwing the Kasarmigama chain out so I can do a strike while also distancing myself, and that's fine. But then I get to some of the other later stuff, and it's really kind of petty. Like, I remember actually citing this in the review. I was making a ninjutsu focused build because I loved having access to these ninja tools, these area control ninja tools. But then the later stuff is like, okay, I got 11 points. What can I spend this on? You can blow 10 of those. I'm exaggerating. To to increase my shuriken damage by 6%.
Yeah. And that's not a joke. 6%. Like literally these tiny weird numbers. Like, okay.
And the problem and the biggest issue I have with it though is that when it comes to minuscule percentages and stuff like that, certain games take to that better than others. Like The Witcher 3 has low numbers as well, but that's because it's taking into account every time you strike an enemy with this weapon, not raw damage output, which barely registers. And Witcher 3 is very hack and slashy with how it handles this. But going to Nioh again, shurikens, regular shurikens, I barely use for two good reasons. I only use them in two scenarios. One, to interrupt an enemy during an attack, usually to knock them off their stamina bar so I can go for a kill or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or two, the range. And even then, that's situational at best because I also have a bow and a matchlock rifle that I have plenty of ammo for. And I don't want to use that. And even if I did use shurikens, I'm using poison shurikens or fire shurikens or paralysis shurikens. Yes, there's few of them, but it goes back into the verisimilitude of the setting of this world because, once again, this is my knowledge, shurikens were not used to cause excessive bleeding. They were meant to incapacitate. Ninjas were usually dipped them in poison or paralysis stuff in order to debilitate the enemy. You weren't even supposed to notice you were even hit with one of them until the poison kicked in.
Yeah, it's not the murder weapon in a Clue. Well, it would be the murder weapon in Clue, but it's not like a sword. It's not your main focus weapon. Well, so let's talk more about, because you're using all these ninja tools and all that. Oh, what we didn't even mention was the living weapon little summon friend you can get that are different elements, and they have all these different stats you can affect you as well as another layer.
I did love that, and plus, this is what I was talking about. I like how they took the structure of the Souls-likes and took a test on it. Like, once again, what usually happens in Dark Souls, Solemn Sanctuary, whichever game you're talking about, whenever you die, you lose all your experience gaining material, your salt, your amrita, your souls, your blood echoes, whatever. And you have to go back to a checkpoint, and if you can make it back to where you died before, you can get your stuff back. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's a workhorse thing. That keeps you interested. Nioh adds a wrinkle to that where they also have a guardian spirit. You choose one at the beginning of the game. They give you these bonuses. Some give you passive abilities like the ability to see traps or see enemies.
Yeah, or just more life or something, like something simple like that.
Or something simple like that.
Yeah.
And whenever you die, your spirit stays behind to basically guard your grave, which I thought was a fun little idea. So you have to go back and get your stuff, but at the same time, the spirit is away from you, so you don't have access to those bonuses. Also, the living weapon mode we mentioned. While the spirit's with you, you basically build up a gauge, and once it gets maxed, you can hit some buttons, and you'll basically go into. I want to call it a super mode, but even then, that's not exactly giving it credit.
Yeah, it's more than a super mode because if you get hit, it reduces the amount of time you have in the mode. It also has to it's more powerful, but you still have to be smart about it.
You're basically invulnerable, but your duration goes down.
Yeah,
but you can also extend the duration if you perform key pulses during your combos. Key pulses, I know we've mentioned multiple times before throughout the stream, but I basically equated it to the quick reload mechanic that the Gears of War games have, where if you hit a button at the right time after a string of attacks, you'll recover a good chunk of your stamina back so you can keep fighting, is the idea behind it. And I did like how they have either while you're in living weapon mode, you don't have a lot of visual affordances you have in order to determine the best time to pulse.
Mm-hmm. You have to know.
You have to play by feel as you go about it, and I like that if you want to extend it. But and here's the thing though, these spirits, if you build yourself right, this living weapon mode can save your bacon in boss
Oh
battles.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I've used it several times, and it was always fun to be able to pull that out when the boss is like at the last little bit of health, and you could finally
Mhm.
like, yeah, and you finish him off, and it feels great.
Yeah.
And you and that's another wrinkle that I do enjoy, and I like how they made you feel even more punished for messing up, but at the same time, still giving you the tools needed to come back. Because there's also consumables that you can use to recall the spirit or recall your Amrita, but they're limited in a very limited capacity. They give you just enough tools to keep going, but I think we covered all the bases that
Yeah,
Nioh
you
covers.
never feel unprepared because of all these systems. Like you always have, you can heal with the elixirs, or you have traps, or you have shurikens, or you can, put fire on your weapon, or you have the living weapon thing you can do. Like there's all these little tools, and if you're not using all the tools, you're gonna have a bad time, South Park. But you can make it through without it if you're crazy, but it gives you enough.
You said South Park. You
It's
said
South
South Park.
Park.
I was saying Undertale.
No, you're gonna have a
I
bad
was thinking
time. It's a South
Undertale,
Park,
man.
whatever. Undertale also good, but let's switch over because the living weapon's a sidetrack on a sidetrack. You play with these weapons like the ninjutsu, which I haven't invested.
That's it. That's it. Damn it.
Yeah, which I haven't invested in at all. I'm basically dual
I'm
swords
sorry
and
about
just
that.
what? Oh, you're fine. Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned before your build is a bit more.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it's like a tank build because having that is almost impossible with how they do damage values. In terms of like, if you're not blocking,
You
you're
were mentioning
probably
you're mentioning
yeah,
that your build is a bit more of a beat stick, I guess.
yeah, beat stick. It's just like I'm attacking, and even now I have a couple other talismans for health regen, but I'm essentially more akin to like the paladin where I have these heals, but I'm fighting. And that's all I'm doing is fighting and dodging and like mastering when you can block or like what attacks you block, what attacks you move away from. And that's the whole game is this little dance with enemies. And that's all Souls is too, but it's a very different dance and one that requires you to learn more of the move sets. So many times like every enemy is like, "Oh, he's doing this attack, I'll wait and I'll get around him here. Always doing this attack. Okay, I know exactly what to do." It rewards that and almost requires it at certain times that level of like
Patience and
studying.
reaction.
Yeah, and patience. A lot of like I've watched a lot of streams for this game, and the people that get stuck on the first boss right now, I'm seeing them fighting it for like 3 hours, and I'm just like, you don't have patience. You need to watch your enemy and know what they're gonna do, and then you can just go nuts and beat them. Like there's such a as a challenge, I tried to play the game as far as I could without leveling up, which is totally doable. And I got through the first 2 levels, and I'm like, all this requires is patience and knowing enemy attacks. Like I'm not special. It was just I know what they're doing.
Congratulations, Mr. Hardcore. Your medal's in the mail.
I know. I'm expecting it in the mail. I'm gonna put it on my fridge. But that's the thing, and I guess we'll get into difficulty later. But
Yeah.
it all it requires is patience. Like this, and the same thing is said for Souls. It's just patience and waiting and knowing when to fight. That's all it is.
And it's once again part of our history with the Souls
That's true.
likes, and
That's true.
that built-in muscle memory. But yeah, you kind of said you have a sort of more, I guess, combat-oriented build. Then again, everything is combat in some perspective here, but I actually gravitated towards a ninjutsu build, a sort of ninja build, mostly because I wanted to see how well thought out the tools were and the area control was, because this is something I can say about Nioh. It seems to focus a lot more on enemy ambushes and environmental advantages given to more humanoid enemies than traps or stuff like there is, like, I wouldn't say there is a level on par with Sen's Fortress from Dark Souls 1, but there are a few that kind of get there, but that's more late game.
Yeah.
As such, I wanted to have a build that focused more on area control and environmental awareness. I wanted to get away from the more aggressive builds, because that's something that always worries me when it comes to these games, that people they listen too much to the more vocal hardcore fan base, and they make it all about that precise, reflex-focused, patience-oriented gameplay. Dark
Sure.
Souls and the entire Souls-like subgenre would not have gotten nearly as big as it has if the diversity of playstyle was that limited. And
Mm.
the closest thing I could think of when it came to Nioh having a unique selling point with its Japanese flavor is I get to be a flipping ninja fighting monsters, and this is coming from somebody who barely plays any of the Ninja Gaiden games, so the novelty hasn't really worn off on me. So whatever, so sue me.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of develop this ninja build, and I found out that the more ninja-oriented clothing actually has perks on it that runs a chance that if you use ninja tools you've prepared, they will not be consumed.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I
So
saw
I
that.
did, yeah, and I started putting more of a build into skill and dexterity. So it became a very fast dodge monkey sort of glass cannon type build, where I'd have these rapid attacks with my dual swords. I'd have my Kusarigama, this chain scythe, for range attacks, and I would coat my blades in poison. In poison, I would prepare on hand, and have the Kusarigama wrapped in a paralytic, so I could paralyze my enemies and just rack up the damage, or have those multiple cuts lead up to characters poisoning, so they take damage over time. And if I accidentally overreach, I can back off and drop some Makabishi, some caltrops to slow them down. Which, you'd be surprised how much miles I've actually gotten out of that, because this is a very aggressive game, and speed and invincibility frames are king when it comes to dodging. The Makabishi, the caltrops, that stuff slows you down, and it basically slows down your invincibility frames. That is dangerous if you know what you're doing, and this does apply to boss battles as well. I have dealt with bosses that have moved way too fast to be even remotely tenable, and I've slowed them down by just pricking their legs or the lower parts of their bodies with these traps, and setting down these ground fire bombs that would, like, if you set two of them next to each other at a time, you will set a character on fire. So you can see, yeah. So you can see the build I'm going for. Just break
Yeah.
them down, damage over time, and just tear through them. And and if I have to use range, I have my Kusarigama to keep myself so I can gauge the enemy if it's new, so I can learn their patterns. And it was a lot of fun to use other things as well, like the catwalking scroll, so I could basically sneak up at enemies to do these almost insta-kill backstab attacks. And it was good because, once again, I like bit of a clarity thing. I loved Bloodborne. I played the crud out of Bloodborne. I platinumed Bloodborne. I barely find the time to I don't platinum games. I do not finish 100% the achievements in certain games. I 100% to Bloodborne. I internalize that aggressive, rewarding, give and take, wreck them mindset of Bloodborne. And I'm like, I don't want to go back to that again with Nioh. I want to try
Hmm.
this different take. See how much of it goes, because it would have been way too easy for Team Ninja to look blatantly at Dark Souls and Bloodborne and say, okay, you know what? If we just make that faster and
Yeah.
make our players even more Twitch hungry crazy people, we'll have a hit. No, you don't do that. Once again, diversity
Yeah.
of play style is important, and that's what I took from my ninjutsu build. I think we have footage of it showing off with.
Yeah, I showed some of your footage earlier with the little Japanese mansion level. I'll probably switch back to
And
it
you
here in a
didn't
minute.
bother to tell me. I feel like,
Oh, sorry.
and you didn't bother to tell me. I wasted 10 minutes right there. But yeah, if you want a reference for the build I
Yeah,
was
I'll
going
switch
for and the
back to it.
style I was going for, and the mansion footage right there in the stream.
Yeah, I'll play it right now so you can kind of see it, because you're seeing you're seeing some submissions, which is yet another thing they added in, which we actually didn't even talk about, is the level structure. I mean, it's closer to
I
Demon
mentioned
Souls,
I
and
mentioned it in
like,
passing. I
yeah,
mentioned it in
well, they're all separate levels. Like, it's very granular. Like, this is this level. They're not intermixed at all, and there's submissions you can go on, which
which are
are like,
basically revisitations of the old world
yeah,
with different
or there's a
conditions.
few are on their own little maps that you get to know, And then there's Twilight missions, which are harder missions of the main missions and even submissions. I did a Twilight mission of a side mission yesterday, and I didn't even know that was a thing. I was like, okay. But there's a bunch of other stuff to do. And with this more linear kind of style, it allows you to do things. And I won't spoil anything, but in the mansion level in particular, there is something that happens that could not happen in a Souls game because of how it's revisiting and all that. Like, because this is its own standalone level that you can revisit and reset everything in it, and it's, linear one and done kind of stuff, it allows different things to happen. Different world events can happen and happen again because of this setup.
Oh my gosh! The first time I did the Twilight mission upper level when you go to Japan and you fight.
And you're cutting in and out a little bit.
Sorry about that, but yeah, I remember playing the Twilight mission of the first level, the first proper level of Nioh, and I remember being actually kind of harrowed by it. Like, I was very over leveled for it, but I was challenged because they just threw so many new enemy demon types at me, and it was a legitimate challenge, just getting through it slowly.
It's not, the Twilight isn't like, oh, we just gave him more HP. Like, no, there's new enemies, and enemy encounters are completely different. It's 100% different enemy layout.
Different enemy encounters. Not all of the shortcuts are around. Like this is something I will say that they did a good job of the level design, finding these environmental shortcuts to mitigate travel. That is very tricky to get right, and they hit a good balance here. But they even have it be that certain shortcuts don't work, or even certain routes are cut off, so you have to go through certain ways. And yet they don't do it in a way that makes it feel like they're just gauntleting the heck out of you. They give you just enough by taking some stuff away.
Yeah.
It's maddeningly good design. Like, once again, Team Ninja going from the likes of like Dead or Alive 5 or Yaiba, Ninja Gaiden, whatever. Yeah, we don't talk about those anymore, do we?
Forgot about that.
They go from that, and then they're like, okay, let's sit down, put the coffee on, and remember why people loved us, and they did this.
Well, another thing too that we've completely forgotten is some of the yokai they exist in these like key pools, and when you approach them, they appear and they're gone. Like, once you defeat them, they're gone, and that is a big change. Yeah, they're mini bosses, but there's a ton of them. And it makes traversing something that could be super annoying. Like, oh, I gotta fight that guy again. Like, no, you overcame that. Now you gotta do this other part. Like, okay, it's very nice in a lot of ways like that.
And I also do enjoy how the yokai enemies do also reinforce the key pulse gameplay, because this is another thing I do enjoy. Like, you bring a new gimmick or a new idea to a game, you have to internalize that. You can't just let that sit by the wayside, because like, this is something I did like about Nioh. First things first, there are these abilities that the yokai and the yokai enemies have, where they basically release these pools of, I guess, negative energy.
Yeah, miasma.
And as miasma of some kind. But as long as you're in it, your stamina will not regenerate. But if you perform a perfect key pulse, you will dispel it. Once again, going back to the samurai philosophy, the samurai way of focus, of taking your decisive blows, of being patient, which goes into the Souls-like philosophy of taking your time and not just going crazy. It's a reinforcement, and it's also a selling of the key pulse mechanic, which I think is great. Then there is the stuff of the yokai that crud. I lost my train of thought. This is embarrassing.
No. Well, they do a great job of justifying the mechanics and the things they add. Just like with the ninjutsu, it's, you can really go balls deep into it. And the same way with the key pulse, like, you need to do that. It's not just we added key pulse, here's a thing if you want. Like, this is integrated into every part of the combat, and you don't have to, but you need to.
Actually, now I do remember what I said, though. The fact that stamina management isn't just something you need to worry about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like
that's huge. That is huge.
Yeah. like seriously, like this sounds like, once again, this is a problem. This is something that is worrying. Like, the action gameplay, in some ways, people do want to be able to just chain from mid stance to low stance to high stance to mid stance and just do a crazy 33 plus attack combo and just abuse the stamina bar. and that's fine. The problem is you're going to get smacked so hard because these guys have armor. And this is probably the closest thing to, I guess, as the Souls Bros might know, it's closest thing that the game has to a poise mechanic, because they
Hmm.
have it be that every enemy follows a stamina bar. Every human, every Oni, every giant boss monster, whatever. If you're good at chipping away at their stamina by either keeping the pressure up or having them overreach certain attacks, you hit them when their bar goes low, they are vulnerable. They will not be able to do anything. They will have no armor frames. You can just keep hitting them, and they'll
Yeah.
react to the blows. And it is beyond satisfying to have a boss monster go into the red
And then
and just wail
you just
on them.
wreck shop. Yeah, summon your living weapon at that point and just like, you're dead now. I'm winning this. I overcame you. I got past your little obstacle. And the same can be said for you. Like, they'll mess you up. You run out of stamina and you're probably dead if you get hit. Like, it's
You're
not good news.
Oh, absolutely not. This even happens in the game's kind of asynchronous PvP they have.
Hmm.
I do like this mechanic though. They have me that enemies do not invade. They don't have the players invade you. It's that their graves are marked
Oh
in the
yeah.
world, and if you can summon a revenant of them, which is basically an NPC controlled version of the player with their build and their items. You kill them, you get some items, some amrita, some experience points, and a sort of glory, which is part of another crazy complex system I'm not going
Online
to get into
thing.
here.
Yeah, another layer we need.
Yet another gosh darn layer, and I've always loved being able to like have them overreach to the point where they have like no stamina, then hit them with a quick jab with the sword or a shuriken, and then do this visceral execution attack on them with my swords or Kusarigama. It's This is, like I said before, the fact they brought in stamina management being something that you can exploit and not just manage yourself was a smart call.
Yeah.